start with Neuroccino, our weekly journal club where everyone is welcome to join us, bring a paper they got excited about and tell us why you got excited about it. And we talk about it and discuss it to the best of our knowledge. Today we have one paper that was already shared in the chat. Anyone else? No. Okay, in that case, Leah, if you want to share your screen and take it away.
Okay, can you see my screen? I guess yes. This morning I would like to discuss this paper by Belloy, Napolioni, and Greicius that discussed the role of the APOE, so the apolipoprotein A4 in the case of the APOE4 allele in the Alzheimer disease. And this is a review discussing the role of this apolipoprotein E, APOE, and in particular in the neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer. So it's a really extensive review from both a pathological, genetic, also like evolutionary perspective of this apolipoprotein. And is it correct, the APOE pronunciation? APOE, do you say, how do you pronounce that?
I learned it as APOE, but
APOE, sorry, because like the first time they pronounced it in English, APOE, okay. So
but that's just me. I don't know if that's correct.
Okay, no, because I didn't know how to, okay. So it's a really important polyprotein, and as you can see, there are several isoforms of this protein. We have APOE2, 3, and 4. And these variations, these isoforms, are due to genetic polymorphisms. So you have different amino acid changes in two different positions. And this combination of these changes give like different protein presentations. So here there is an illustration that really helped me to understand this. So for example, in the APOE2 isoform, you have these two cysteine here. And this is the shape of the protein. If you have a cysteine or an arginine in these two different positions that you can see here in yellow and violet, you see that in APOE3 the shape changes slightly from the APOE2. Instead, in the APOE4, when you have two arginine here, the shape changes like this. And these different presentations have a different percentage in the normal population and in the Alzheimer disease patients. As you can see here, the APOE3 is the most common isoform. Then we have APOE2. We have APOE4 and APOE2, and with different presentations in control and Alzheimer disease. As you can see here in the Alzheimer disease, we have a higher presence of the APOE4 isoform. So this is to understand the subject of this review. Then there are a lot of studies discussing the correlation between, in particular, APOE4 and APOE4 and neurodegenerative diseases. For example, here you can see how it seems that the presence of the E4 allele is correlated with the accumulation of the amyloid that is present in another biomarker in neurodegeneration, is correlated with the presence of the APOE4 variant, and in particular is increasing with the age of the participants. And But this, the APOE4 is not just correlated with Alzheimer's disease, but it's called pleiotropy. So it can be correlated to different diseases, such as cardiovascular disease. Indeed, is correlated with a high risk of coronary artery disease, myocardial infarction, and the patients who present this variation, the APOE4, has a higher risk of these cardiovascular diseases. Here there is also an illustration of how the different presentation of the different variations are correlated with neurodegenerative diseases. Here first, the Alzheimer's disease, and the Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, and then it seems that there is not a correlation with the lateral sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, multisystem atrophy, and multiple sclerosis. And it is interesting, so why in the Lewy body dementia we have this influence of the APOE4 allele, and there are studies now where also in postmortem you have the double diagnosis of both Alzheimer, Lewy body dementia, and there is also, it's nicely discussed also here in the test, if someone is interested. Also for multiple sclerosis, there is another discussion correlated to mental decline, how this could be correlated with the APOE4 presence, and so we need the further evidence to discuss all these points. But then there is a high correlation with the presence of proteinopathies, so the amyloid, the tau, the alpha-synuclein, and the TDP, as we see, for example, in the frontotemporal lobe dementia. And then the APOE4 variant is also correlated to triglycerides present, cholesterol, and as we have seen for the vascular disease, the coronary artery disease. So is this to show that the APOE4 is a pleiotropy function, so it's correlated to more dysfunctions in both the cardiovascular pathways, let's say, and also in the brain. And what is also interesting about the APOE4 that in the brain, the blood barrier are impermeable of these protein, so the concentration that we have in the cell, in the CSF and in the brain can be like different, because there is a different regulations between the two, as I understood from this review. And also there is also a correlation then with vascular dementia, that is like a pleiotropy of there is not like specific criteria to diagnosis that standard, but there are all the dementia correlated to vascular disease evidence that we can see in the brain. And also there is an inverse correlation with longevity. So looking to healthy controls, the presence of the APOE4 variant is correlated with a decreased lifespan. So it seems not a good thing to have this variant. Indeed, as is also, and I will go back to that, but I want to jump in the evolutionary perspective that is really nice, where they explain that so it seems that the APOE4 was the ancestral allele, So the first one to be present, and then we have a variation of these genetic variations that bring to APOE3 and APOE2. And it seems that there is like a kind of correlation. So it's better to have the APOE2 variant, for example, in different in the correlation with different risk for diseases. Here you can see, for example, that I want to show that, for example, here for the Alzheimer disease, if you have the APOE4 variant, the risk increase. Instead, if you have the APOE2, it seems like actually protective. These are the odds ratio for the Alzheimer disease presentation, and it seems that we have the same trend in for myocardial infarction. But if you look to other diseases like lobar hemorrhage, you have this, they call a U-shape presentation. So it's not always that if you have the APOE4 variant, it's no, it's always that you are in higher risk for disease, but also APOE2 there is this different presentation. So it's not always like an increased trend from APOE2 to APOE4, but you can have also this U-shape trend that is also present here for the triglyceride presentation. And yes, whatever. I want to say something else. Here is the discussion with the dementia with everyone. It's really interesting, and how and why also in the Parkinson disease is not present this correlation. And of course now there are these large genetic banks where we can explore these correlations, such as the UK Biobank or also the Lifespan project. And another thing that they discussed in the end, also this, because it's really long, so I am trying to find a way to explain. Another thing that they discussed in the end is about the genetic therapies. So, so if we see that there is this correlation, how we can target these in genetic therapies. And here there is this discussion that actually seems that paradoxically it's better not to have this APOE4 presentation. So yes, the genetic therapy will target these in the future. And also here there is a discussion related both to the different geographical presentation of the APOE4. You can see here that it seems that there is this north towards south gradient with within the south a greater presentation of the APOE4 allele, with some outliers, let's say, in the northwest regions. And here, this is the correlation with the Alzheimer's disease, how it's really evident in the Caucasian population, also with less extent in the African American, and lower extent within the Hispanic, and then higher again here in the Japanese, Southeast Asia. And so this is also really interesting in the evolutionary perspective. Also, there is another big discussion or investigation going on with the sex coupling, so gender coupling with the APOE4 presentation. It seems that in women, the presence of the APOE4, it's more bounded with the presentation of the Alzheimer's disease. Here you can see in these shapes we have like the women, and the probability to have the Alzheimer's disease is higher. You can see also here in the odds ratio in the female carrying the variation compared to the males, so they are more prone to have Alzheimer's disease. And also here you have a distribution of both here you have the tau levels, and you see in red the female and blue the males distribution with and without the APOE4 variant. You can see here in the mild cognitive impairment we have a higher presence of APOE4 variant correlated to the tau pathology in women. So it's also interesting to investigate this gender link with this polyprotein variation. And also here they say that in the Manhattan plot that we show in other review about genetics and the brain, so where you see the correlation of, for example, imaging derived phenotypes in the biobank with single nucleotide polymorphosis, usually they stop to the chromosome 22. So there is not really investigation of how gender, so the X and Y chromosome they are linked with the different disease presentations, and so this genome-wide association also in the brain. That is what I'm interested to. So yes, this was the all the points addressed in this review, and if you have some question, I'm happy to answer. Maybe there are yes, it's a really extensive review that really gave you like a full degree view of the study of the APOE4 presence in Alzheimer, in neurodegenerative disease, but also in other diseases. And also they trying also to explain all the link with the proteinopathies. That is a really interesting part. So the causality of this frequency, this statistical correlation that they see in the literature, but it's then it's an open field because has both the APOE4 is a pleiotropy, so it can cause several diseases, but also a disease can cause by polygenetics effects. So it's really difficult to find a direct link, and so a unique link between a gene and a pathology, because there is also an interaction with a lot of other aspects. There are also some single cases described where which they have a APOE4 deficiency. So if really we think this APOE4 presence is a problem, so like genetic therapy can target this, and it has been shown that you don't have like so a central nervous system defect or diseases if you have an APOE4 deficiency. So it's really but there are single cases, and then also there are like larger studies are needed. And in this perspective also the next generation sequencing are really useful in this perspective. Also in the conclusion They say that in Stanford, where this the group that they conducted these reviews from Stanford, they say that they are creating a biobank for an extensive biomarkers, also using the next generation sequencing, where you can see more genetic variants or mutations. Also, I think with those they're really quick, but I have to investigate this further. So if you have some questions or some other comments, maybe you also have different perspective in this.
Amazing, thank you, Leah. Yes, Hervé, you have a question.
Yeah, I can start. So thank you, Leah. So very interesting. So always you always target very interesting paper, at least for me. Okay. So APOE is a long story because it's in the imaging genetic story. It's one of the first gene which was, I think, the more specific target to use, because the relation was really clear between Alzheimer and this gene, and it's why it's used a lot during at the beginning to use neuroimaging and to target, for example, structural imaging to go to these different polymorphisms. What is interesting is that first, it's in the story, it was completely by luck. So APOE was not, at the beginning, the gene was not linked to Alzheimer. It was just, they found it, they found the relationship, not looking at it. So that is interesting. And so from that, they started to, so for the neuroimaging point of view, there is a lot of literature, even in the lab. We had several papers looking at the APOE. What is interesting is that now with the large database, they look at, for example, there is the one from Enigma looking at the hippocampal volume, looking at doing a GWAS, because the first target when you look at Alzheimer is the hippocampal volume or hippocampus. They didn't find it. So do you have, I saw in the paper that there is some explanations, but did you get some more information about it?
For the hippocampal, I don't remember these.
So for example, for charge, you highlighted this sentence, and they didn't find any relationship between APOE in charge. Charge is a consortium of different database, not only imaging,
yes,
but also.
Yes, I saw that. Where it was? Wait.
Let me check this. It's at the end. I think. Yeah, go down.
Yeah, there is not always. There are always a lot of discussion, but this one, no,
it's up. Go up. That was I think. No.
No, here it's about.
No, okay, no.
Wait.
If you search for charge here, you would. Nope.
It's a French keyboard.
But
charge.
Yeah.
Okay. It was for longevity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not for the hippocampal. They don't talk about hippocampus, I think, in this paper.
No. Okay. They don't. They are more focused in the correlation with the different like tau patina, Belloy. They don't address a specific imaging imaging derived phenotypes like the hippocampus. So it's more in the let's say biological link. I can say really like how. Why we see the correlation between the Alzheimer's disease presentation and the APOE4 and how also the proteins are linked. So there is not a discussion with, but it's really interesting. Maybe there are other review addressing that. I have to look. So here in this chart, they didn't found the correlation with the hippocampal.
So if I may jump in here, I had a similar question, and that is there a map of where the different APOE variants are most likely expressed, or Are there susceptible brain regions, or is it ubiquitous in the brain?
I was
Do
going
we
to ask
know?
that.
I have to look to the paper that it was published in Science last week, but there is not the APOE4, because when you look to this, or you have to look better, because when you look also in the biobank, you have all the single so like these informations, no, like the genetic variations, like these. Usually, like in the Manhattan Project, you have like the genetic polymorphosis and the link with the imaging derived phenotypes. And yes, I have to check if these polymorphisms are present in the different in the studies investigating the brain features. So you have to look in that. I am starting now to look to this literature. But usually there is this, no, there is like there is this no, they call Manhattan plot, where you have like in the y axis the imaging derived phenotypes, so for example hippocampal volume or DTI measures, and then you have all the polymorphisms and you see where is the peak, so the highest correlation with one variant. And so yeah, you have to look into that.
Thank you. Evie, did you had another question, or you?
Yes, but this is in the conclusion. Can you go to the conclusion? I didn't get one of the the path forward. They talk about they do a database, but just before they have what is talking. Don't move, don't.
I don't move, sorry. Just before I put it.
Where is it? For example, yes, just before, yeah. Let's see a quick look at the exome data available in the AD sequencing project. For example, revealed 2 healthy heterozygous carriers of APOE, loss of function mutation, both above 85 years old, and one with the APOE. I didn't get this sentence. Do you have more info on that?
2 alpha carries of APOE for loss of function mutations above old and one with APOE. So yeah, like in the conclusion I was lost a little bit, but maybe it's because I'm not really I need a background. But when I understood when you say heterozygous, it means that in the chromosome the 2 alleles are not the same.
Yeah.
So you can have in one, for example, the APOE3 and the APOE4, so there are all these combinations.
Yeah.
And here in this part they talk, probably this sentence is related to here, where they explain a lot of single case like patients and presentation and how to find this correlation. And loss of function mutation. So maybe here they I have to check better, because here I was a little bit lost, because there are like a lot of single case examples, and the one that I remember is one of the first single cases they show is where they say that there is not a link between a APOE deficiency and problems like so dysfunction in the brain. And yeah, I have to look better to this part. Sorry.
No,
I was a little bit lost because there were like a lot of single case. So here there is a description of all the single cases and also like the family history or other comorbidity that you have that can influence. For example, there is one with here from a socially deprived environment. And also you don't know if then the environment also influence in the genetic presentation. So there is like a really deep discussion of all these single cases.
Okay, thank you. Can I continue? Some
yes,
people. No, just when you talk.
Because you have a good perspective on this.
Yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead, Victor.
No, I just wanted to ask you what exactly was not clear about the sentence that you highlighted first, like with the two healthy heterozygous carrier.
So here they say a quick look at the exome data available in the sequencing project, for example, reveal. So there are
Yeah,
two
to me, just like, yeah, they found two healthy elderly that had mutations that completely deactivated their APOE, right?
This is it, maybe. Yeah,
I think because
you're right.
Yeah,
see
so
that
maybe
loss
they
of
will
function
see that,
mutations on for two of people that are older than 85, and one with heterozygous 3 and 4 APOE.
That means it's not. Yeah, it's they explain. Yeah, the APOE is not. It's not monofactorial. That means
Yeah,
you
that
can
means like it's
completely
possible
break
to
it
have.
down, and it's not a problem. And luckily, it's like that because a lot of people are heterozygotes, so it's not. It's a 1/3 of the population. So if you
yes, indeed, there is also this yes discussion less or gain if you have the APOE. Yes, so it's not clear. So they see, as I was saying, that there was at the beginning this really straightforward correlation, but then if you then go in deep, also in the healthy populations, it's not really so clear. And also like in the geographical distribution, it's different. So yes, we have to understand better, I guess.
Okay. Now, my following question was: so it's about aging only, or do they have some perspectives about development, and so they have this part on evolution, and but do
yes,
they have something about development and?
So development in like if you like mean like in the childhood, like that no.
Okay.
It's in aging, so in the longevity, and also there is this paragraph, maybe it's the end, where they explain the evolutionary, no, the evolutionary perspective. Here. The ancestral background, as I was saying, it seems that the APOE4 is the oldest variant, and then you have like this adaptation, so going towards like a better variant, the APOE2, and that is estimated to have 80,000 years, like it's old as a variant. And they say also that the position of the APOE4 in position 112 is also consistent in both and mice experiments. So it seems that from an ancestral perspective, it's a good thing that you have these in the same position also in other species. So it means that it's no, I guess like an ancestral derivation, if I'm not wrong. Let's say that.
And this map is pretty cool too. I look at it and it's,
yes, it's really. They also discuss. They like try to say that maybe there is like a climate adaptation in higher temperature or lower temperatures, to find maybe an explanation of these, but also I don't know if when I was reading these statistics, I was thinking, but do we have the same data sets like in like northern countries and in Africa? I saw that I also was looking to know these projects, because there are a lot of going on, and I saw that they actually have samples also in Africa, in South America, but I was thinking that there is a uniformity of statistics because it is the results, but do we have the same data at the beginning? I was thinking about that, but it's not discussed.
Thank you, Leah.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before I jump in with my list? Okay, so thank you, and thanks, Evie, for already asking some of the questions I had in mind. It seems in the paper that the main driving force for developing the variants or the variants that leads to a disorder is age. Is that right, or did the review just focus on the factor age?
No, there was this interesting discussion about age and also in the gender coupling, because they say that maybe we don't have like enough statistics in this in the 40, 50 age span, when there was also another graph in the beginning that it was clear. The really first figure, I'm going back. Here, where there is not this clear link between the APOE4 and the, for example, here the amyloid accumulation. So they seems that this correlation is really like clear if you go like in elderly people. So maybe this is why in the conclusion they discussed that the few subjects not presenting the problem, but they say that actually yes, we have a lack of statistics here where maybe you have like early onset neurodegeneration, or it's not, we have less statistics here because usually in this part, for example, for neurodegeneration, we have the highest number of investigations. I don't know if I answered. So there is this imbalance between the, yes, it's more clear, above 60, but it's not less clear like before how this correlation is present. But it's really in the perspective of the cardiovascular disease, also with the cholesterol and triglyceride. Maybe this can be also investigated in younger people, I guess. And also there is also a correlation with stroke. Here, the risk of ischemic stroke is roughly 30% greater for APOE4 carriers. So maybe there we have a younger patient age, I was thinking, but yeah, they just discussed that limit in the gender relation.
So there's room for epigenetic and environmental factors as well. Okay.
Yes.
The other question, I don't know if I'm taking this too far now, but I have this dangerous half knowledge of my times at university where we learned that it could also be a neuroprotective factor, and you alluded to it in one of the figures, and I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more. And I do apologize for the background noise. For some reason, they decide Monday morning, 9:30 is a great time to work on the scaffold outside. So I'm just going to try and move myself as much as I can.
So protective. So it seems that the APOE2 present, it's protective for some diseases.
Sorry, Leah, can you zoom in a bit so it's easier to see?
Here. I want to. How can I do this? Yeah, here there are like the plots of the correlation, and it seems, for example, the odds ratio with the Alzheimer's disease, and it seems that the APOE2 variant is resilient to diseases, so protective somehow. But not for all, because then in the lobar hemorrhage, it seems also correlated to this dysfunction. So yes, there is this. When you say protective, you mean like a variant is protective of the APOE4 present in general? Because
that's why I said dangerous half knowledge. I don't quite remember what they taught us at uni.
Okay, because to what I understood, the APOE2 variant can protect you to some, so there is an inverse correlation. and the APOE4 no, so it's like always correlated to the disease. And they say that there is this hypothesis that maybe you don't really need the it's really maybe we are looking for we don't really need the APOE polyprotein. Maybe it's just a problem for the coupling with the other proteins. Indeed, I think that they're really interesting. The cases where they are polyprotein deficient. Now I was remember that they also discuss 2 patients somewhere that they have a specific thing. Where it was? But yeah, like the APOE4 as like protective. Maybe the APOE2, like it's like can protect, like it's resilient to some diseases, I guess. And or maybe like in and then in some other populations, maybe I don't know, maybe in the Hispanic, maybe that consideration was related to a specific population where you have a different. But yeah, for all these evidences, it seems a negative factor, having the APOE4 not protective.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Yes, Lilith.
Yeah, I have a question. So I didn't understand what does exactly APOE4 gene do. So like, does it increases the probability of these amyloid plaques, developing of these amyloid plaques, or?
So they for the causality.
Yeah. What is the present?
Yeah, they don't know. There are like some hypotheses, because they saw that if you have this APOE4 mutation, you have like an increase of these, for example, the amyloid and the tau protein, so these protein pathologies, but it's just a statistical correlation. You don't really see, you don't know. There are some hypotheses from, so there are these hypotheses that they link together. So this accumulation, so like somehow the APOE4 is stuck or linked to the plaque, and so when you have a higher presence of the APOE4, you have also this accumulation in the brain, like in neurodegeneration. But it's not like there are in the test some hypothesis, but it's not clear the link of so it seems that there is like a binding between the proteins, but it's not so for what I get, but it's not so for sure. And that here there's this discussion when they say the quality or the quantities, that they try to address your question. So how these factors are related. Also here they discuss that the APOE4 in the central nervous system is produced both by astrocytes, primarily not glial, but microglia. So in the brain, if we want to focus on the brain, the APOE, it's expressed mainly in astrocytes and microglia, and so for example, an increase in the beta amyloid production can be related to the segregation of the APOE4 neurons, and or also the microglia when there is like so in fact something that the microglia has to be activated, there is an up-regulating of the APOE production that is also correlated to the amyloid pathology.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and also there is this correlation with this other mutation, the TRIM2 or others. So it seems this upper regulation in the brain came up with the response of the astrocytes and microglia, and also this is in the central nervous system, and then there is this link that is clear in the cardiovascular disease with cholesterol, triglycerides, and also all the link with myocardial infarction. So and this is different levels of APOE, because as I was saying, the brain-blood barrier is impermeable to these, so you can have a different production within the brain and extra brain, and like in the body of these APOE. And yes, this is what I get.
Thank you so much.
Any final questions? Any comments from anyone? No? Everyone happy? Last chance? No, that's it. Okay.
I stopped sharing.
Thank you so much for the paper, Leah. Very interesting. Thanks for the discussion, everyone. Next week, we see you again on Monday morning, 9:30, for another paper discussion or a book review. We don't know yet. We see what's coming in during the week. Have an exciting week in science, and we see you next week. Bye.
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 Every day I feed my brain.